beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. When will Srila Swami Prabhupada, who was established within this material world, the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master and unto the feet of all Vaishnavas. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami, along with his elder brother Sanatana Goswami, as well as Raghunath Das and Raghunath Bhatta, Gopala Bhatta, and Srila Jiva Goswami. I offer my respectful obeisances to Lord Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, along with Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar, Srivas, and other associates. I offer my respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani and Sri Krishna, along with their associates, Sri Lalita and Vishaka. We're going to jump forward to the next to the last verse. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta. I offer my obeisances to Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas and all others in the line of devotion. So this is what this seminar is about, the line of devotion. Sureshwar Prabhu, very senior devotee in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, has put together a very wonderful seminar. So I would like to now introduce Sureshwar Prabhu to say a few words while I finish off with the setup.
Now the good news is that this lesson I'm going to teach tonight is the signature lesson of the whole seminar. It's got the same title as the seminar. As you see there, Srila Prabhupada found it, right? So it's a standalone lesson. You don't really have to have come to the others to appreciate this, so you get even more if you do come after this lesson for the rest of the seminar. Here we go. Alright, slideshow, current slide. There we go. Okay. So, who knows? Any old timers in the house? Who knows exactly? Who knows where Srila Prabhupada is in that picture besides our illustrious President Ramabhadra Prabhu? Anybody know where he is? No. Wrong side of the pond. Bhaktivedanta Manor, yes, 1973. They also had their 40th. Just past Janmashtami. Donated by Sriman
George Harris.
George Hari's son. So there, I chose this slide because there is Srila Prabhupada, and he's graciously accepting a toy from a little girl. And in the background, and that little girl, by the way, if she's still on this planet, is in her mid-late 40s now. And there in the background is Srila Prabhupada's initiated disciple, Srimati Hemavati Dasi. And the point of this slide is that that little girl has just as much opportunity to have a foundational relationship with Srila Prabhupada as does Prabhupada's initiated disciple, or just like me. Okay, so I took initiation from Srila Prabhupada. That's not my core identity, that I'm his initiated disciple. My core identity is that I'm his instructed follower. That's what it really means to be a Prabhupada Anduka. It doesn't matter when you were initiated, who you were initiated by. In the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, Srila Prabhupada is the foundational spiritual master. Okay. So in the interest of time, I'm going to move to the next slide. Here we go. Whoop. Let's see. Okay, there we go. All right. So now we're going to have fun. We're going to look at some prophecies, both ancient and modern, that our Srila Prabhupada actually fulfilled. So who knows the very ancient prophecy that Srila Prabhupada fulfilled from the Puranas, that's the key part of the question. What prediction, what prophecy did Prabhupada fulfill that's actually contained in the very old histories called the Puranas? Anybody know? Raise your hand. Who? Come on. Come on. Okay, so 5,000 years ago, Krishna was still on the planet. Well, 5,135 years ago, say some astrologers. And the devotees knew that Krishna is getting ready to leave. And as soon as Krishna leaves, they know that the present season of time that we're in, the Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel, the age of conflict, the age of dissension, is going to come in full force. So the sacred rivers personified, the goddesses behind the holy rivers, approach their spokesperson, as we say, spokeswoman, Ganga, the Ganges, Ganga personified, this beautiful goddess. And they say, Ganga, Krishna's still in Dwarka, but when he leaves, all hell's going to break loose, and all these Kali Yuga folks, these Kali Yugans, they're going to come to India sometimes, and they're going to dump all their sinful reactions, their bad karma, into our sacred waters. In modern parlance, we might say that they were saying, we don't want to become toxic waste dumps. What's the program? What are we going to do? Please go ask Krishna what to do. Okay. So Ganga said, good point, I'm going to go to Dwarka and ask Krishna a question. And according to the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, she asked this question. Oh Lord, we can see that your pastimes are about to end, and people are becoming more and more materialistic. You have been very merciful to us. After you leave, however, all the sinful people of Kali Yuga will bathe in our waters, and we will become overwhelmed with sinful reactions. Smiling, the Lord replied, be patient. Now we're going to have Radhika read the first slide. Since you're a lady, and since Ganga's a lady, this is what the Lord said to Ganga. Go ahead. And then Krishna went on. There's more to the prophecy. Not only in Bharatvarsh, that means India, but also all over the world, people will chant, Hare Krsna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. By this chanting, this is Krishna speaking to Ganga, by this chanting the whole world will become Eka Varna, one designation, namely Hari Bhaktas, devotees of Lord Hari. And then Krishna goes on, listen to this. And because the devotees of Lord Hari are so pure, anyone who contacts them will become purified from sinful reactions. And now Krishna does a little bit of rhetorical jujitsu, because just like in jujitsu, you can use the energy of your opponent against your opponent. So Ganga had complained that these Kali Yuga folks, they're going to dump their bad karma into our water. Well, Krishna says, not only are they not going to dump, here's what the pure devotees are going to do, that my mantra Upasaka has made. These pure devotees will visit Bharatvarsh and purify you of sinful reactions by bathing in your sacred waters. And now the most amazing part of the prophecy is the only line of this prophecy that our Srila Prabhupada told us. He didn't tell us the backstory, because if he told us the background, then we would have said, hey, that's you. But he didn't do that, because he was never directing people to himself. He was always directing people to Krishna. This is a symptom of a great, 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 great soul. So here's the only line Prabhupada told us. He says to Ganga, This period of worldwide chanting of Hare Krishna will continue for 10,000 years. That's the only line Prabhupada told us. That's the caliber of our founder Acharya. He never called attention to himself. If people have even heard of the Hare Krishna movement around the world, chances are they haven't heard of its founder. They've heard of Hare Krishna, but very often they haven't heard of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. That's because Prabhupada is utterly, absolutely transparent to Krishna. Okay, that's a prophecy from the Puranas. That's an old, old prophecy. You can Google it. Brahmavaivarta Purana, you're going to come up with 4.129.51. Google it. Google My Mantra Upasaka. Great worshipper of the holy name. Who was that person who took the holy name around the world 14 times in 12 years? Srila Prabhupada. He fulfilled that prophecy. Okay. Now that's an old, Purana means old history. Very often nobody gets that one. But very often some people get the next one. So let's go to the next slide. Okay. Now it's the same picture. And by the way, raise your hand if you know where that picture was taken. It's either Tompkins Square Park or Washington Square Park. I can't tell which just from that little shot, because obviously the big tree in Tompkins Square is not there. But there is, let's see, I'll tell you who's who. There's a devotee now named Brahmananda. He was Bruce. There's a devotee named Achyutananda. He was Chuck. There, of course, is Srila Prabhupada banging on the tom-tom, which is now in New Vrindavan in his palace of gold in its own little shrine. And when the jazz musicians who were in the park already heard Prabhupada playing that little tom-tom, they would say, "Hey man, the Swami gets in some good licks." Because he was expert. It wasn't even a mridanga, it was just a little tom-tom, you know. Okay, so 5,000 years ago we had the Puranic prophecy, and then just 500 years ago there was a Gaudiya prophecy. That is to say, a prophecy that was made in writing in Gaudiya Vaishnava literature. That is to say, literature coming after the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. Does anybody happen to know this one? This is a little more known. I did.
His name would be chanted in every village.
No, that's a good guess. You're warm. That's what Lord Chaitanya said. So Lord Chaitanya said, my name will be chanted in every town and village. But there's a prophecy who predicted someone who would do that, who would make that possible. Yeah, that's good. You were warm there. Does anybody know the Gaudiya, the Lord Chaitanya type scripture? No? Rambhadra? Okay. Well, it's a great devotee named Srila Lochan Das Thakur, who wrote many songs, and he also wrote a book called Sri Chaitanya Mangala. Okay, you know this. All right, we're going to have you read. Can you see the screen? Can you read? Yeah. All right. You're going to have to read loud. Is this going to reach? You're going to have to come over here. You can see the screen better anyway. Okay. So here, I'm going to set you up now. Here's the context. Before we had Ganga going to Krishna and Dwarka. Here we have Narada Muni. Who doesn't know Narada Muni? You know Narada Muni. He's the best spaceman, right? He can go anywhere in the material universes, in the multiverses, and he can go anywhere in the spiritual creation. And once upon a time, he went to see Lord Chaitanya in his special section of Goloka Vrindavan in the Golok Navadvip quarter. And he went there because Kali Yuga was coming on, just like it was coming on 5,000 years ago, and Ganga knew it. And so he said to the Lord, in effect, I'm just paraphrasing, Kali Yuga, it's going to be so bad. What are we going to do? What's the program? So, in Chaitanya Mangala, Lord Chaitanya says, before I'll read this, worry not, Narada, with the powerful chopper of Nam Sankirtan, the chanting of Hare Krishna, the public chanting of Hare Krishna. I will cut the hard knots of demoniac desires from the hearts of everyone. And then there's some very crucial Bengali here. Yadi papi Charidharma durideshayoy mora sena patti bhakta yaibeta toy. And that means, we're going to click it in and Prabhuji's going to read. Go ahead.
Even if the sinner reject religion or flee to foreign countries, I will send more Senapati Bhakta, my military field commander, to go there and deliver them.
And deliver them, yes. Okay, so when Prabhupada was circling the globe 14 times in 12 years, thank you, Prabhupada, he would very often use military metaphors. He was that commander, commanding the whole worldwide Hare Krishna explosion. You know how he did it? There was no email, there was no fax, there was hardly even telex was just coming in. And there was hardly any money for phone calls, you know. So what did Prabhupada do? He would write these letters on these pale blue aerograms that would float in from wherever he happened to be in the world. That's how Prabhupada ran this movement. Even if you're just interested in managing, you know, like a business or a group, you got to study how Prabhupada managed the Hare Krishna movement. He did it with pale blue aerograms. Okay, so he would say that these books that I'm writing and publishing and you're distributing, they're like bombs that we're dropping into the laps of the conditioned souls to explode their misconceptions of life away, just exploded them away. And the people who are distributing the books, Prabhupada said, you're all like my soldiers. So he would use these military metaphors. And then it's interesting, it says, even if the sinners reject religion, this is what intelligent people often do in our Kali Yuga. They reject religion out of hand because so much nonsense is done in the name of religion. So many wars, so much bigotry, so much sectarianism, all in the name of God. You ever seen the bumper sticker? It says, "Oh God, please save me from your followers." Right? Because in Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel and hypocrisy and sectarianism, that's who's fighting very often. So-called religious people. So organized religion, who's supposed to be God's PR man, inviting everybody back to Godhead, actually becomes a source of perplexity and even repulsion for intelligent people. There was one German philosopher, Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, and he was the author of the famous God is Dead philosophy, but actually his quarrel was not with God. If you know anything about Nietzsche, his quarrel was the way God was presented. A very forbidding God, you know, full of anger and wrath. So Nietzsche said, you want me to believe in God? I could only believe in a God who dances. Yes. So that's what we're presenting. The God who dances. Okay, so this is a Gaudiya prediction. So who was that Senapati Bhakta who created faith in the faithless, who created theists out of atheists, like me? That's our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes very quickly, depending how eager and sincere the person was. Let's go to the next slide. You got where's the mic? Whoop. Okay. Notice how Radhika is poised. You can stay poised. That's good. She's like a Himalayan yogini, poised. Okay, so here we go. Now there's one more prophet. Now usually more people get this one. See if you can do. This is in the last 125, 130 years. There was a prophecy made by one of our own previous acharyas that Prabhupada fulfilled. Who knows the prophet? Anybody know? Bhaktivedanta. Who said? Again! Come on! You're a two-time winner. The grand prize, you go back to Godhead, right? Here we go. Very good. Okay, so Bhaktivedanta Thakur not only made this prediction, he wrote it, he published it in his journal, his Bengali journal, Sajjana Toshini in 1885. It means for the satisfaction of the Vaishnavas, the Sajjanas. And he said this. Go ahead, Prabhu.
A personality will soon appear in order to preach the teaching of Sri Chaitanya and move unrestrictedly over the whole world with his message.
Yes. When Prabhupada was traveling the world, thank you. When Prabhupada was traveling the world, opportunities would just open up because he was so desirous that everybody chant Hare Krishna, be happy, give up bad karma, that Krishna just gave him so many opportunities. It was like the parting of the Red Sea wherever he went. So that was in 1885, and then recalling this prediction, or not recalling this prediction, but 11 years after this, our Srila Prabhupada appeared in 1896 in Calcutta, and telling us about his own appearance, Prabhupada once said, "Who knew that I would come to my Guru Maharaj? Who knew that I would come to your country? Who knew that you would come to me? These are all the arrangements of Krishna." So now we're going to look at some of the arrangements Krishna made to pave the way, to set the stage of world events for Prabhupada to come and do what he did. He didn't do it independently. He was the willing instrument, tool of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Krishna, let's talk about Krishna and his incarnation as Lord Chaitanya. Starting when Lord Chaitanya appeared, he started to make some very significant stage setting of world events. Okay. So, raise your hand if you know what's going on there. Do you know what's going on there? You know? You never done that?
Dance?
Yeah.
Oh, all the time.
In public? Have you ever done that? Mm-hmm. Oh, good. You see, you know what it is. So you're gonna read this next slide. So the first stage setting Lord Chaitanya did, and Lord Chaitanya, very simply put, is Krishna in the mood of a devotee, specifically in the mood of Krishna's greatest devotee, Radharani, Radha. So the first thing that Lord Chaitanya did is this. Go ahead.
In the 16th century, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtana movement ignited a Bhakti Renaissance in India.
Yes. When Lord Chaitanya came, the whole subcontinent of India was ignited by the fire of his devotion. And this was reflected in the West. What was going on in the West was a renaissance, but was a renaissance of exploring the natural world and the temporal world. And that was very interesting. Lord Chaitanya arranged that. While he was encouraging everybody to explore inner space in the heart, have an intimate relationship with Krishna, he was also arranging that the Western world would get very, very interested in exploring the natural world and eventually develop all their technologies, which was this kind of stage setting that Prabhupada used to circle the world. Okay, what's your name? Kristen. I want you to keep reading these nice stage settings here. So that's the 16th century. And then, go ahead.
In the 19th century, Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakura
Revived.
What?
Revived
Mahaprabhu's pure teachings and envisioned a worldwide movement of Krishna consciousness.
Notice the gap. 16th century to 19th century. By Lord Chaitanya's mysterious will, that very renaissance that he ignited throughout India, then he submerged. Within 100 years after Lord Chaitanya appeared, he appeared right around the time of Columbus. Columbus is 1492. Columbus sailed the ocean blue looking for India. Lord Chaitanya appeared in 1486, left in 1534 CE. And then by 1650, his renaissance was eclipsed. It was submerged. It was overshadowed by so many imitation Krishna movements, which were infested with people doing all kinds of abominable things in the name of loving Krishna. So it took 3 centuries of being underground. It took a great soul named Bhaktivedanta Thakur to revive the pure teachings and then reach out to the West. He sent a book in the year that Prabhupada appeared, 1896. Bhaktivedanta Thakur sent a book called Sri Chaitanya, His Life and Precepts around the world, especially famously to McGill University in Montreal, Canada. He had correspondence with the American transcendentalists, Emerson and Thoreau. He was a real reviver, and then a bridge builder. He was a super guru. Okay, but he realized he didn't have time to manifest the movement that he was envisioning. He was envisioning a global, worldwide Hare Krishna movement, but he knew he didn't have time. Time was running out for him. So he prayed for a son who could continue the work that he started, and he got it in the person of Prabhupada's own spiritual master, Krishna. We're not going to let you off the hook here. You got to keep reading. I'll do the Sanskrit. You just read English.
Thank you. In the early 20th century,
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Gaudiya mission
spread Krishna consciousness throughout India and sent the first
Vaishnav.
Vaishnava preachers to Europe.
Yes. So Prabhupada's own Guru Maharaj, his own founder Acharya, he not only revived Krishna consciousness in a very exciting way all over India, but then he was the first one to take it outside of India, to England, to Germany. Unfortunately, as we'll see in ensuing lessons, his mission as a cohesive, coherent, cooperative mission fragmented after he left, because his leading disciples fundamentally disobeyed his instruction to work collectively, cooperatively. Don't try to replace him. But they did. They fought over who was the next big person. You don't replace the founder Acharya. But luckily, fortunately, by Krishna's grace, there was one disciple, namely the person of our Srila Prabhupada, who did carry on the teachings faithfully and did cross the ocean. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, because before Prabhupada crossed that ocean, Lord Chaitanya made some very fine-tuning stage settings to world history. Are there any Roman Catholic folks in the house? No? Not even a recovering Roman Catholic? No? Okay. Well, in 1961, in the history of the Roman Catholic Church, there was something very profound that happened. Anybody know 61 to 65? There was a big meeting. That ring a bell? Yes, Pope John the 23rd, a very avuncular, kind of Santa Claus-like, well-loved Pope, called a meeting, called a council, to try to make the Roman Catholic Church, as it's trying to do right today, become more relevant to the modern world under Pope Francis. And they met, and then unfortunately Pope John died in office, but then his successor picked it up, and the conference was completed in 1965, the very year Prabhupada came over. And the most significant resolution to come out of that conference, according to some liberal Catholic theologians, which we'll use, was that for the first time, the Roman Catholic Church acknowledged that God could reveal himself to traditions outside the Roman Catholic Church. Thank you very much. It wasn't necessarily any longer that if you weren't a Roman Catholic, you were necessarily going to hell. Thank you very much. So this gave very subtle but very powerful psychological permission for Roman Catholics, who number in the tens of millions worldwide, to look at and appreciate other faith traditions, other revelations. And one fine day in the summer of 1966, after Prabhupada came in 65, one of these nice Catholic boys was walking down 22nd Avenue between his welfare office job and his apartment where he wanted to take lunch. And he noticed in this 22nd Avenue storefront someone who looked for all the world to him like Buddha, because he'd been reading Buddha's teachings. He was a Catholic boy reading Buddha's teachings, okay? And he didn't have time to go in at the moment, but when he came back some days later, he walked in, and there was this Buddha-like person with big earlobes and a very soft demeanor, but very authoritative speech, lecturing on Bhagavad Gita. And then after the class, the Bhagavad Gita class, he asked the person who they called Swamiji, he said, Swamiji, and he asked a question which is very typical of people reading Buddhist teachings. He said, how can I understand that I'm just nothing? Nothing. Zero. So what did Swamiji say? You are not nothing. You are something. But you are not this body. You are not nothing, you are something. You are not this body. And that began a guru-disciple relationship In September, he was initiated, Steve was initiated as Satsvarupa. 6 years later, Satsvarupa took sannyas. 6 years after that, after Prabhupada disappeared from this world, he was asked by our governing body to write Swamiji's, Srila Prabhupada's, authorized biography, which we know as the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. These are all the arrangements of Krishna. We're going to click in the slide now. Radhika, why don't you read this?
In the 1960s, when our Srila Prabhupada sailed to the West, the Vatican relaxed its attitude toward other religious teachings. The USA relaxed its Asian immigration laws, and the American counterculture began to look to the East for truth.
So beside the religious stage setting, where the church said, God's grace can be revealed in other traditions, then that was a religious stage setting. There was also a governmental stage setting. Just before Prabhupada came, the Immigration and Naturalization Service, which is now subsumed under the Department of Homeland Security, relaxed its absurdly restrictive Asian immigration laws. Growing up in America, I was born in the Lower East Side. I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut. I never saw an Asian person in Stamford. I never saw an Asian person. And then one fine day, it was the summer of 1966, I'm working in a factory as a college student summer job, and next to me on the line appears this short man with kind of brownish skin, and his name is Ali, and he's from India. And he thought I was so funny, because I was a young American college kid. I probably was real funny. And I thought he was really funny, because he was this funny guy who spoke funny English from India. That's how I was thinking of him. So it's because the INS relaxed its Asian immigration laws, probably because Japan was our adversary in World War II and we had Asia-phobia or something. That allowed Prabhupada to extend his visa, and then finally he got residency, he got his green card. This is another stage setting of Lord Chaitanya. But the final stage setting that Radhika just read, and the American counterculture began to look to the East for truth, is perhaps the most profound stage setting. Before Srila Prabhupada came to America, he spent a whole lifetime preparing for his mission. And nobody cared about his mission. Even his own family didn't care about his mission. The government of India certainly didn't care about his mission. The businessmen of India didn't care about his mission. Even his own spiritual master's mission had fragmented, and they weren't capable of doing anything cooperative and collective and dynamic that Prabhupada envisioned. But when Prabhupada came to America, what did he find? He found a whole generation of people just interested like anything in meditation, yoga. I mean, the Pied Pipers of our generation were who? The Beatles. And they were interested in everything. And George Hari's son, he interested his fellow Beatles in Eastern music, Ravi Shankar, then the Maharishi, and then they finally got darshan of Srila Prabhupada. This is all the arrangement of Krishna. Books like Autobiography of a Yogi, Be Here Now, Ramabhadra talks about his lifelong, love of the Gita, starting when he was a teenager. This is Krishna's arrangement. Totally Krishna's arrangement. Okay, so now what we're going to do is show when Prabhupada came to America, believe it or not, he had no intention of being the founder, acharya of anything. And this letter we're going to show you, excerpt from the letter, is just one example of how that's true. First of all, we'll flash this on. I chose this photo because even though it was taken after Prabhupada was successful and he had many disciples, it shows him alone. He's not with anybody there. And he's writing a letter. So Prabhupada, from the time he landed in America from September 1965 to the time he started ISKCON in July 66, for those 10 months, you know what Prabhupada was doing? He was intensely studying America. And he was lecturing whenever he could, but he was trying to understand how to introduce Krishna consciousness to the America scene. And while he was doing that, he was also writing his godbrothers in India. The people who were fighting in the courts over who owned what temple and who owned what property. It had just become, another quote, religious mess. So World War II had engulfed the whole world in war, but even in Siddhanta Saraswati's own mission, they were at war amongst themselves. Prabhupada was aloof from that. He came to America. He saw that everybody's mad after anything Eastern. There's an unlimited preaching field here. So he starts writing letters to his senior godbrothers in India saying, hey, it's not, better late than never. The Gaudiya Math's been, fighting for decades, but, I'm here, and I'm one of you, and we just need men and money. Come on, let's do it. Prabhupada's looking at these properties, in the Big Apple, in New York City, $1 million properties. And so here's just one letter. If you do have the database, anybody have the database? It's a great cyber tool. You got to get the database because you see all of Prabhupada's spoken and written word right in there. So here's one letter that Prabhupada wrote to a rather prominent member of the Gaudiya Math back in the day. And let's see if I can set in more context. Okay, here, what this letter excerpt shows is Prabhupada's mood. Prabhupada had no intention of him being the leader of anything. So let's see, who would like to read? Somebody right here, can you read? Yeah? Yes? Oh, why not? Okay. Can you see that? Yeah.
Srila Prabhupada likes the Krishna consciousness movement along with complete humility and enthusiasm. I came here to study the situation and I find it very nice, and if you are also agreeable to cooperate, it will be all very nice by the will of Srila Prabhupada.
He means his Prabhupada, his founder Acharya. Okay.
If you agree, then take it for granted that I am one of the workers of the Sri Mayapur Chaitanya Math. I have no ambition for becoming the proprietor of any math or mandir, but I want working facilities.
Thank you. Yes, Prabhupada is saying to this person who happens to be the Mahant, the leader of the Sri Chaitanya Math, which was the flagship temple of the Gaudiya Math. Look, I'm here, it's your movement. I just think of me as your worker. I just need funds, and I need people to help me. And he's writing this person, Bhaktivedanta Tirtha Maharaj, because Tirtha Maharaj, he was a very good fundraiser. And elsewhere in the letter, Prabhupada said to him, by Srila Prabhupada's grace, that means Bhaktisiddhanta's grace, you have the Calcutta Marwaris in the palm of your hand. Marwaris are big business people in India. So he said, you can do it. I know you have the ability to raise the funds to get a temple here in New York City. We need a building. So this is a very telling letter. Prabhupada is saying, think of me as, I have no ambition of being any owner, any proprietor. I just want working facilities. Okay, so that's November 65. Now as time went on, guess what? As Prabhupada sent these letters out, not only did he get no encouraging response, sometimes he got negative response. One respondent said, what you're doing is ludicrous. And this is one of Prabhupada's godbrothers. And Prabhupada was forced to say, no, this isn't ludicrous. This is, in fact, what our Srila Prabhupada wanted. He wanted everybody to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, especially in the English-speaking countries. So between September 65 and July 66, what did Lord Chaitanya reveal to the person who would become our founder Acharya, our Prabhupada? That you're not going to get any cooperation from these people. They have totally disempowered themselves from cooperating. Too much has gone down, as we say, too much water under the bridge. You're going to have to go it alone with me, Lord Chaitanya, and your Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So in July 1966, and there's a collage, there's Lady Liberty, Prabhupada, Matchless Gifts, that was the first storefront. This numerical goof in the collage? 26th Avenue, right. Don't go to 26th Avenue. Is there a 26th Avenue? No. Right. Yeah, Manhattan is long. So that Brooklyn. You'll be in Brooklyn. It should be 26 Second Avenue. Anyway, I'll read this one. When Srila Prabhupada incorporated the first chapter of ISKCON in New York City on July 13th, 1966, he signed the papers with his sannyas name only, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So he had gone from obscurity, and now at least he was getting some followers, and they were calling him Swami-ji. Swami-ji. No Prabhupada, no founder Acharya. He's just trying to get a toehold, a little foothold for the Hare Krishna movement in America. Okay, so it's July 66. Now, Prabhupada did ignite his Krishna consciousness movement in 26 Second Avenue. And then he did the unthinkable to his first followers. He left 26 in January 67 to go up to open up a second branch. They thought it was just going to be 26 Second Avenue forever with Swamiji. But Prabhupada, he was always thinking globally. In fact, he had a globe in his room, and he would spin it. And he would say, you are going to go to Russia, and you're going to go to South America. And they thought he was just, they didn't know what he was talking like that. They couldn't conceive of it going beyond 26 Second Avenue. Anyway, Prabhupada went to San Francisco in January 67, and then he came back to New York City in April 67, and then just as the calendar was approaching Memorial Day at the end of May, Prabhupada had a stroke. And this, of course, was very shocking, of course, for Prabhupada, but also his followers, because when Prabhupada came over, he was doing everything. He was chanting, he was leading them in the park, he was giving all the classes, he was cooking for them. He was like a Superman. And then Krishna gave everybody a wake-up call. Swamiji is 70 years old, and you've got to help him. He's in a mortal body here. So he had a stroke. They took him to Beth Israel Hospital in Manhattan for a few days of tests. And after a few days, Prabhupada realized they weren't helping him at all, so he said, get me out of here. So 2 of his first disciples put him on the gurney, and when the doctors weren't looking, they ran for the elevator. And they beat the doctors downstairs who were running after him by this time and saying, you're going to kill that old man! And Prabhupada's on the gurney just, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. And they sped away, and Prabhupada got away. Anyway, where did Prabhupada go? He tried to recoup his health on the Jersey Shore, the late great, being rebuilt now with the help of federal funds. And he went to Long Branch, New Jersey. Anybody from Long Branch? No? Okay, that's where my mother and father met after World War II. And he tried to get his health back, but it was cloudy, it was chilly, it was May, June, but it wasn't happening, So Prabhupada heard from his devotees in the Bay Area that they were going to have the first Rath Yatra parade. Anybody been to the Rath Yatra parade? You must have. Yeah, okay. Down Fifth Avenue, ends up at Washington Square Park. So the first ISKCON Rath Yatra took place. The cart wasn't a cart, it was a flatbed Hertz rent-a-truck with a yellow cab. And the deities were all facing different ways. There was Lord Baladev facing left side of the truck, Subhadra Maharani facing the back, and Lord Jagannath facing the right, out to the right. But Prabhupada was too weak to even go to that parade. He went out there to get his health back and to attend the first Rath Yatra, but he was too weak to go. They put Prabhupada up at a beach in Marin County called Stinson Beach, a little bungalow, Spanish bungalow called El Paradiso. And there's Prabhupada all bundled up. And 3 devotees stayed back with Prabhupada. They also didn't go to the Rath Yatra parade because they wanted to make sure Prabhupada had all his needs met. So during the parade, a very historic, a defining moment happened in the Hare Krishna movement at this bungalow. And you can read about it in Prabhupada's life story, the Prabhupada Lilamrita, and also you can read about it in more detail in another book Has anybody read the book by Mukunda Maharaj called Miracle on 2nd Avenue? Yes. Here's another book you got to read. You guys got a lot of homework to do. So Mukunda Maharaj tells it pretty much the same the way he told it for us biography team people when the biography was written. He said that Mukunda, was there with Swamiji at this little bungalow, and two other devotees, one named Hayagriva and one named Kirtanananda. And Hayagriva and Kirtanananda, they kind of coerced Mukunda into making him ask a question to Swamiji, which Mukunda didn't really want to ask. And the question was this, because they were all very worried. I mean, Swamiji himself was in weak health, but being very neophyte and self-centered, the devotees were worried that what's going to happen? Swamiji is telling us now he's going back to India to get his health back. What happens if he doesn't come back? What do we do? Here we are, we're just, newbies in Krishna consciousness. And what should we do? So here's the question that they kind of coerced him into asking. So, Radhika, who are we going to have? Courtney, you going to read? Okay. Courtney, can you see that?
When you die, what will happen to the movement? I asked. Will you have a successor who will continue your work and look after our spiritual education?
And then Mukunda writes, as I heard myself say the words, I realized it had been a mistake to ask this. The Swami sat silently, looking out the window at the sand dunes and the mountains. It was high tide, and I could hear the waves pounding the beach. Seagulls shrieked. The Swami muttered something quietly. I couldn't hear what you said, Swami, I said carefully. Can you repeat it? Courtney.
Actually, it is an insult to the spiritual master, he said.
He turned away from the window and looked at me pensively, as if he was hurt by my question. I'm sorry, Swami, I said. I felt like shrinking into the carpet. He closed his eyes. Outside, a dog barked. A shallow stream of tears appeared below each of his eyes and flowed over his cheeks. He slowly wiped them away. My spiritual master, he said, and his voice choked to gravel. I was stunned. What had I done? Courtney.
My spiritual master, he said. He was no ordinary spiritual master. He paused again and then whispered,
falteringly,
he said to me,
no ordinary spiritual master. Sounds like a contradiction, huh? I thought a spiritual master was not ordinary. Well, it's not ordinary to be any kind of spiritual master. But Prabhupada's making the point here, as we learned in Lesson 1 on Friday night, there's different qualities of spiritual masters. It's one thing to be a regular spiritual master, it's quite another to be on the caliber of a founder acharya. So there's the real punchline to this whole exchange comes later in the day, and it's recorded by Hayagriva, who wrote a book called The Hare Krsna Explosion, who tells how Swamiji later in the day revisited that exchange, that incident. And here's how he tells it. Okay, I'll just read a little bit, and then Courtney's going to fill in the words. So Hayagriva wrote, some of the devotees, worried that Swamiji has decided to go to India to leave his body, ask him whether during his absence one of his godbrothers should come to America to assume ISKCON leadership. The minute this question is presented to him, we sense that it is offensive. Swamiji becomes very grave, closing his eyes, and for a moment he seems to consider it. Then suddenly we see tears falling down his cheeks. My Guru Maharaj, he was no ordinary spiritual master, he says, wiping away the tears. He saved me. And now here is a comment that Prabhupada made later. Courtney?
Later, Swamiji tells us.
Hold it up to your mouth.
Later, Swamiji tells us, we should have always known there is no one to replace him. The very idea is insulting. If anyone comes and tells you something different, he says,
you will be confused. Here is Prabhupada saying outright that only he is really empowered, authorized, to turn them, from diamonds in the rough to real diamonds, to real Vaishnavas. Only he could lead them. Only he was uniquely empowered to make devotees out of international people outside of India. This is very significant. So he's gone from obscurity to being the founder of ISKCON, and now he's telling his first followers, no, you don't go to my godbrothers for intimate shiksha, for intimate instruction, and especially you don't go to them to learn how to run the Hare Krishna movement. They did that later. Some leading devotees did that, and it really confused things. And we're going to talk about that later on in the seminar. Okay, so Prabhupada, this is a very important point. Very important point. Only he could lead them. All right, so that's June, July 67, and now we're going to go to May 68, 10 months later. And the occasion is, let's see here, yeah. The occasion is, it's called From Swamiji to Prabhupada. The occasion is Prabhupada's in Boston in May 68. And Boston is actually the home of a phrase that actually, has anybody ever heard of the phrase Boston Brahmins? Yeah? Okay. So it comes from a famous American writer, essayist, poet, and physician, medical doctor, named Oliver Wendell Holmes in the 19th century. And he was a Boston Brahmin himself. He was, one of the upper class in Boston. He said, the best people in Boston, they're like Boston Brahmins. Because by then, the Gita was in America. The American transcendentalists who were also from that area, Emerson and Thoreau, they knew of this phrase, Brahmin, somebody with high qualities. And so in May 68, Prabhupada was in Boston. He said, it's time to give second initiation. In ISKCON, we take Harinam initiation, and then when we prove our mettle, we prove our sincerity, then we're given Gayatri Diksha, if we're qualified, to come closer to worship the deity like that. And so Prabhupada said, it's time to give Brahman initiation. And so Prabhupada's Sanskrit assistant, Pradyumna Prabhu, said, oh, Boston Brahmins. And Prabhupada seemed to know that reference because he said, yes, Boston Brahmins. So they had a Brahminical initiation for the men. There were 2 ladies present. Traditionally, ladies in India don't get the Gayatri. They follow their husband. But the American ladies were discouraged by this. They pouted, they fretted. And Prabhupada saw it was a different context here. So for him it was no big deal. For the sake of encouraging them in Krishna consciousness, he said, okay, we'll make this adjustment. The ladies can have Gayatri Brahman Diksha too. And they were very happy. And then one of the ladies, you can see this recounted very nicely on a DVD series. Has anybody seen the DVD series called Following Srila Prabhupada, put together by Yadabar Prabhu, our ISKCON cinematographer? Okay, here's another resource. They're very good. So on DVD number 1, it's 1968 May, and you see the movies, Prabhupada in Boston, and then you hear my godbrother, Govinda Dasi, talk about how Swamiji, as they were still calling him, became Prabhupada. And here's how it went. All along, everyone knew him as Swamiji. Let's get a reader ready. It's a girl's turn. You like to read? Why don't you? Right here. Okay. Okay, so first I'm going to set you up. Here's the whole background. So Govinda Dasi says, all along everyone knew him as Swamiji. This is up until May of 1968. And then she says her husband, whose name was Gorsundar, wanted to call her Govindaji. So Gorsundar decided he wanted to call me Govindaji. And so he asked Swamiji, and Swamiji said, no, actually, Ji is a third-class form of address. It's better not to call her Govindaji. So I piped up, being a very forthright young American lady from Texas, by the way. She's a very strong girl. And she said, so I piped up. I was sitting right in front of him, and I said, well, if it's a third-class form of address, why are we calling you Ji? Why are we calling you Swamiji? You got to understand that Prabhupada allowed a very familiar grandfather-granddaughter type relationship with Govinda Dasi. I mean, to this day, I can't even imagine talking to Prabhupada the way she did. But Prabhupada allowed this because somehow that's kind of the way the relationship evolved, and he saw that that would encourage her. So he allowed this. Listen to this very familiar exchange now. Why are we calling you Swamiji? And he said, it's not very important. I said, oh no, it's very important. She's taking the lead here. She's telling Prabhupada what's very important. Oh no, it's very important. If it's a third-class form of address, then we don't want to call you that. So Mataji, please see how it went. Read.
We want to call you the most first-class form of address. So tell us what would be a good name for us to call you by. And he was very humble, very reluctant. But I pressed him. We have got to change this.
We've got to change this, she's saying.
And he said, you can call me Gurudev, or Guru Maharaj, or Prabhupada. So I said, well, that's 3. We need 1. So which one is the best? And he answered, Srila Prabhupada is nice, and that's the best. So I said, from today, you will be called Srila Prabhupada.
Jai, Govinda Dasi ki Jai. So you see how Prabhupada worked. It had to come from us. He didn't insist that he be called Founder Acharya or Prabhupada or anything. He knew that it had to come from us. So when he saw that Lord Chaitanya was arranging a situation, a moment, where they wanted to give him more reverence and more respect, Prabhupada let it happen. And then Govinda said this, if you see the DVD. She says, so I told all the devotees, right? I told all it's not Swamiji anymore, it's Prabhupada. I told all the devotees. Some of the devotees didn't like it because it's kind of a tongue twister. Prabhupada and Swamiji kind of flows more easily. But we gradually started calling him Srila Prabhupada from that time. Okay, so again, he's gone from obscurity in 65, writing God Brothers alone, and getting the message from Lord Chaitanya that he's going to have to go it alone with the Lord and his Guru Maharaj. He's forced by the non-cooperation of his God Brothers to start a fresh branch in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, and make a clean break from the debacle that had become the fragmentation of his master's own mission. And then in 67, he made it very clear that no one can replace him. You don't replace a founder Acharya, although he's not called by that yet. 68, he goes from Swamiji to Prabhupada. And now in 1970, 2 years later, 2 years, 2 months later, July 70, the month I joined the Hare Krsna movement, we find Prabhupada legally defining himself in relationship to his own movement. Finally, the Hare Krsna movement is now taken off. It's gone international. It's exploding everywhere. Temples are springing up all over the world. And on July 28, 1970, when Srila Prabhupada legally established a governing body commission to manage ISKCON, you see how what Prabhupada did? Fully 7 years before he disappeared, before he left this world, he started his succession plan. He was determined that what happened to his spiritual master's own mission, the Gaudiya mission, not happen to his ISKCON. He started training people to take over the management. Not to replace him as the founder Acharya, but to take over the management. So here's where he formally, legally drafts some documents. And here's what it says. And this, if you have the Veda base, you can look it up. It's called Directions of Management. It's under legal documents. And it says right there, International Society for Krishna Consciousness Incorporated, Founder Acharya. If you saw the lesson last night, most of you didn't, but there's an organizational component in that English-Sanskrit hybrid compound, and a spiritual component. Founder, someone who establishes something, some group, some organization. Acharya, someone who's the exemplar, who embodies the mission, the mood, and the teachings of that group more than anyone. Founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So that's 1970, the month I joined, and as wonderful as it was to be in the Hare Krishna movement, when Srila Prabhupada walked among us, guess what? It was a wild ride. There was only one adult in the Hare Krishna movement, and that was the founder Acharya. We were all kids. Really, it was wild. And it was so wild that, for example, in 1970, you'll see in a future lesson in the seminar, it's called To Love Is to Cooperate, that's next Friday. There was even a month after I joined, there was a festival in New Vrindavan, and people were saying Prabhupada was Krishna. I mean, that's pretty wild. Wild. Prabhupada is God, And one of the people saying this, he was connected with Prabhupada's press. Oh, by the way, after July 28, 1970, the very next day, you know what Prabhupada did? On July 29th? He made another legal document. He incorporated his book publishing house, the BBT, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, as a hedge, as a protection. If anything should ever happen to ISKCON, the way it happened to the Gaudiya Math, at least his books would continue to be published. There would still be a publishing organization. So anyway, when I joined the Hare Krishna movement, I joined in the Boston Temple. I wasn't a Boston Brahmin though, I was a Boston hippie. And I was staying in the basement. And the precursor to the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust was ISKCON Press. And ISKCON Press, you know how they would bind their books? I can tell you because I was sleeping in the basement where the bindery was. And this one devotee who was the binder, he would stack the books up from floor to ceiling, and they would be glued together. I mean, not between the books. Luckily, he had enough sense not to glue. But yeah, it was the pages of each book were glued. Those books didn't last very long. So there was one, and then they were coming out with the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam in chapter form. You might have seen some of these surviving paperback chapters. Lord in the Heart, Bhagavatam is the answer, process of creation, like that. So one of these books were presented to Srila Prabhupada as being the latest book published for him to distribute. And on the cover of the book, it didn't say, all it said was A.C. Bhaktivedanta. No Swami, no Prabhupada, no founder Acharya. Whew. Furthermore, in one case, let's see, what else? Temple presidents were writing Srila Prabhupada from their temples on their own stationery. No mention of the founder Acharya. No mention that this was Prabhupada's temple. This was the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So you can read some letters that Prabhupada wrote if you have the database, saying, oh, by the way, when you write me in future, please write on ISKCON letterhead, and by the way, you should put founder Acharya, ISKCON, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He had to tell his own leaders, the head of the press, temple presidents. One temple president sold the temple, took the money, and ran. Because the temple was not in ISKCON's name. It was in his name. Things were pretty wild. They were unformed. They were still getting together. One person took the sannyas order, then left the movement, and then he was declaring he was Jagat Guru. He was Srila Prabhupada. I mean, wild stuff. So in 1970, Prabhupada identified himself in relationship to his own movement. But 4 Julys later, in July 74, he felt compelled, by this time so many wild things had happened, he felt compelled to reassert his identity. So he had the GBC draft a resolution, another thing you can read in the database. It's called Amendment to Documents, to Official Documents. And on July 22, 1974, Srila Prabhupada instigated and approved a GBC amendment to his earlier management document, reasserting his supreme position in ISKCON. Maharaj, why don't you read this? You're going to read something on this. Here we go. Okay, this is the strongest written description that I've ever seen of Prabhupada's position in relationship to his own movement. Go ahead.
It is declared that His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is the founder Acharya of ISKCON, International Society of Krishna Consciousness. He is the supreme authority in all matters of the society.
He is the supreme authority in all matters of society. Furthermore,
his position cannot be occupied by anyone else, and his name and title must appear on all documents, letterheads, publications, and buildings of the society.
yes, July 22, 74. Yeah, buildings. When the BBT finally got its own building on the West Coast and Prabhupada visited, there was nothing on the building identifying it, what it was. Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, Founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, there was nothing. So it's, as wonderful as it was to be on the planet when Prabhupada was walking among us, there was very often severe neglect. And to this list we might add today websites. Just for fun, when I was at the temple, I won't say the temple's name to protect the innocent, but I was at a very prominent temple in our movement, presenting this seminar, and just for fun, I went on the temple's website to see how they were presenting Prabhupada. I could not find Prabhupada on the website. I could not find him. You know where I finally found him? I found a tab that said, History. I clicked on History, and there was a brief, sketchy bio of Srila Prabhupada. Completely aghast, I went to one of the temple managers. I said, Prabhu, if we think Prabhupada is history, you know what? We're history. As soon as you remove the foundation, what happens to the building? That's what we've seen in ISKCON's history. If people weren't grounded in the fact that our founder Acharya is everybody's foundational relationship and identity, if leaders have problems, they take whole countries with them over the rainbow, over the hill. We don't want to repeat that. So to this list we could also add websites. Interestingly enough, don't misunderstand, Prabhupada is not doing this out of vanity or ego or for profit, adoration, distinction. He's not reasserting his supreme position in ISKCON for his own aggrandizement. He's trying to protect ISKCON. He's trying to protect this fledgling branch of the Chaitanya tree. We get a view of his real inner mood when we go to the Sri Chaitanya Chaitamrita, which he was translating that very summer, 74. Now we're going to get a look at his inner mood. It's a real nice counterpoint to this, strong legal statement that Prabhupada is having the GBC make here. Okay, let me go to... All right, if I can find it. Yes, okay. Okay. So that same year, in 1974, even as Srila Prabhupada was reasserting his position as ISKCON's founder Acharya, while he was translating the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, he also reasserted his disciplic obedience and service to his own spiritual master in the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay, so it's called Srila Prabhupada as Saraswat. Just as I gave some acknowledgments to my Prabhupada Position Committee teammate, His Grace Ravindra Sarup Prabhu, for doing the research for this part. So this slide also, I have to thank Ravindra for this. So here it is. So let's get a lady. One of the ladies? Or it could be a gent. How about this gent here in the purple? Sir, you want to read? Can you read? Okay. So what you're going to be reading is Srila Prabhupada's, he's contextualizing the movement and himself as being nothing but the servants of Saraswati Goswami, who's connecting us to the whole Gaudiya Sampradaya. So go ahead.
As member of the Krishna consciousness movement, we belong to the family but discipline successor of
Saraswati Goswami.
And through we are known as Sharpi.
Saraswatas.
Sharpi of senses are therefore often to the spiritual masters, and as Sarvata Devi or a member of the Sharpati family.
Okay, Prabhu, you're having a little trouble, aren't you? Yeah. Why don't you pass the... Mataji, you want to read the rest? Can you read? Thank you, Prabhu. The next one. Oh, the next one. You see what Prabhupada's doing? Oh, you can read it over if you want. Into the mic.
As members of the Krishna consciousness movement, we belong to the family or disciple succession of Saraswati Goswami, and thus we are known as Sarpitas. Obediences are therefore offered to the spiritual master as
Saraswat Deva.
or a member of the Sarvata family.
Okay, and now we're going to give the gents a chance for the next slide. How about you? You want to read? Here we go. Thank you.
Namaste Saraswati Devi, whose mission is to broadcast the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gauravani Pracharini, and to fight it with the impersonalists and the voidists, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatari.
So you see how Prabhupada is reasserting his and our disciplic obedience to Saraswati Goswami and connecting us to the whole Chaitanya Sampradaya, Gaudiya Sampradaya, going back to Lord Chaitanya. So it's not out of vanity that he's reasserting his supremacy in ISKCON. He's trying to protect it. Okay, and now, very interestingly, we're going to hear a clip, an audio clip of Srila Prabhupada. Sorry about that. Okay, so Prabhupada is in Caracas. He was in Hawaii, then he went to Mexico City, then he went to Caracas. He made one visit to South America, the top of South America, Caracas, Venezuela. That's the right one here. And he's lecturing on Srimad Bhagavatam 111. Who knows the very first verse of Bhagavatam, Maharaj? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dimahi. It's right there. Yep. Yep. Can you see that? That's right. Oh, yeah, that's it. Oop. Thank you, Maharaj. That was beautiful Sanskrit. It means in plain English, I offer my obeisances to Lord Sri Krishna, who is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly, here's the relevant part, he is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. So Prabhupada's lecturing on this in Caracas. It's February 1975, February 21. And first of all, let's hear what he has to say about those words. Well, first I'm going to scroll it in. Here's what you're going to hear Prabhupada say, and now I'm going to see if I can do it without blasting. I might have to turn it down a little. Oops. Okay.
So, here it is stated originally, he married, because here it said, Jato Annaya Sita Krishna Jisu Vidyon Saram.
So, that means he is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent. Hear how Prabhupada drew it out. Abhigya Swara. Now, that's Krishna. He's the source of everything. And he's also in every atom of the creation. You know when Mother Jashoda looked in his mouth? Open your mouth. Balaram says, you've been eating dirt. No way. All right, I'll open my mouth. And what did she see? She saw the whole cosmic creation. She saw herself inside Krishna's mouth. What's going on? Okay, so that's Krishna. He can do that. Now Prabhupada, in the next slide, he's gonna say, we're gonna hear him draw an analogy between just as Krishna knows everything about his creation, so he, as the founder Acharya, knows everything about ISKCON. Listen to this. Very interesting. All right.
Just like this, I'm just not the origin of this Krishna consciousness movement. And that means I know everything directly and indirectly of all this. If I do not know directly and indirectly everything of this movement, then I cannot become the founder. And as soon as the origin becomes a knower, he is life.
As soon as the origin becomes a knower, he is life. Just as the universe doesn't come from a dead stone, it comes from a supreme person. Life comes from life, ultimately from the supreme life, and that person is so amazing, he can be off playing his flute, dancing in Golok, and he can also be present in every atom. So Prabhupada is saying, similarly, I am the founder Acharya of this movement. I'm not God, but I know what ISKCON is all about. I know what it's meant to do. Okay, so as soon as the origin becomes a knower, he is life, and that is the cue for the last slide of the evening, which is how the founder Acharya, in our case, our Srila Prabhupada, he's the life and soul of all generations of devotees in his ISKCON branch of the Chaitanya tree. Here it is, Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya, a famous image you've probably seen on the cover of the Science of Self-Realization. And who's going to, let's let Maharaj, or maybe, yeah, okay, we've already said your turn. So here it is. Let's read the final thing there.
As ISKCON's founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada is the life and soul of all generations of his followers. Moreover, whoever enriches our foundational identity as Prabhupada-nugas is also glorious. Deepening the cooperation will need to take Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya's mission of Krishna consciousness to every town and village on earth.
Thank you, Maharaj. Just because we're focusing on Prabhupada's position as founder Acharya doesn't mean we're minimizing anyone else. As they say, a rising tide floats all boats. So when you glorify the founder Acharya and you engage your disciples in his mission and you worship his morti, and you study and distribute his books, everybody wins. And we find the unity, what we're going to need to go to every town and village. This is the vision of Bhaktivedanta Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and our founder Acharya, that to succeed, to fulfill the prophecy of Lord Chaitanya, that Krishna consciousness will go to every town and village, we need a global effort, a multiple guru culture. Lord Chaitanya is ordering everybody to become guru. Who is the student today is supposed to be the guru of tomorrow. Not to replace the founder Acharya, but to serve his mission.